what is up? Happy Wonderland Wednesday. Are you ready to do this? Oh my God, I'm so excited for tonight's show. It's been a while. I know we were off last week. I was in Dublin. It was a bit of a whirlwind trip. It was my birthday, and I so appreciated all the amazing love that you guys sent me, the videos, the pictures. That was so awesome, and I felt so loved. So thank you, everybody that wished me a happy birthday last week. I appreciate it. And tonight is a very special show because our guest is Tom Ruegger, animation legend. Been working in animation for over 4 decades as a writer, a producer, a show creator, an executive producer, a composer. I mean, you name it, he's had his fingers in that pot. And Tom is super inspiring to me. We originally had him scheduled, I think about 5 weeks ago, and had to reschedule. So today's the big day, and I'm so excited. I want to say, hey, thank you to everyone that's joining in live. Peyton, hey, Nika, so good to see you on here. Baku, nice to see you. Chris Brown, always appreciate your support. Hey, Sebastian, thank you for the birthday love. Blue Eyes, how's it going? Alex, how are you? Hunter, Sam, thanks for joining. Hey, Jeffrey, how's it going? So happy to see all you guys on here. Now, as you guys know, this is a reschedule. So we're so lucky that Tom is able to come back on the show. And let me see if he's on here. No, not quite yet. So I'm going to be on. Oh, Hunter, that is too sweet. Debbie, how's it going? Are we talking cartoons tonight? We're talking a bunch of cartoons tonight. So I'm so excited. Hey, Tamar. It's so good to see you. So good to see your faces. Let me just see if Tom is here. I don't think he's here yet. Maybe I should have texted, but that's what iPads are for. How are you guys? Why don't you go ahead and type one word in and let me know how you're doing. How are you feeling tonight? Are you happy? Are you glad that we're all back on again? It's so funny, Hunter, that you just said Sam I Am. Aw, Peyton, thank you. You said Sam I Am, and actually, Tom has, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but a collaboration that's a bit of an ode to Dr. Seuss that he did with Mark Hamill called Will You Wear a Mask? And it's kind of like an audiobook thing. So you guys should check that out. And yeah, I know, I'm also so glad because that was one of the shows I was really looking forward to. When I was growing up, he did so many of my favorite shows. Tiny Toons Adventures was definitely one of my favorite shows. Animaniacs. And then, Disney's 7D is totally solid. There's so many amazing shows that he's been a part of. So we're going to dive into the process of creativity and what it is kind of like working on so many different avenues and aspects of animation. A lot of people focus on one particular area, whether that's producing or whether that's writing. And Tom has really kind of reminds me a bit of Walt Disney in the way that he has brought forth so much content and so much good vibes to the world. So, Tom, I see that you are here. Let's go ahead and do this. You guys, put your hands together. Here! And now it's going to zoom way in. Do you guys like my flowers, by the way? Hi!
Hey,
How
Alicyn.
are you?
Just great. Yourself?
So good. I'm so excited for this interview. Thank you for joining us.
I'm very excited to be here. And hello, everyone out there. And isn't she a great host?
La, 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 la. I played the Pinky and the Brain theme song as my music bed. So
Very
hopefully
nice.
I don't get sued. Just kidding.
No,
We usually edit that out. Yeah, it's so good to see you. How was your day?
Very good. Busy. Yeah, we were my wife and I went to on a trip to national parks, so we're still recovering from the hiking, but it's been great. Yeah.
Well, at least you're both alive. No,
But
it's amazing because I'm also like a huge fan of the national parks and just being out in nature. And I was wondering, is that something that's really important to you guys?
we hike a lot, and we went on some hikes that I will never go on again, and I cursed the mountains that made those hikes happen. But we got to the top, and then I cursed them, and then I went down. Uh, they were very difficult. But everyone, please make sure you see the Grand Tetons in your lifetime. They're fantastic. See the geysers in Yellowstone, incredible.
Yeah, and actually, if you're coming from LA, Avelo has like $45 one-way flights that we got up on.
Wow,
You
fabulous.
can't beat that.
You can.
Yay. Well, it's so good to have you here. I'm sure your schedule keeps you super busy, so I appreciate you carving out time for this interview.
Well, it's a pleasure. And now you're busy in the voiceover world, and uh, boy, I've met a lot of great actors over the years, and we could maybe talk about some of them at some point.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Well, we had Rob Paulson on the show a couple months ago.
Yep,
That was
he's
really
one of the
fun.
greats. He's one of the greats of our time for sure. Uh, I started years ago, and I worked with Dawes Butler and Don Messick and some of those other great voices from the past.
What was that like?
Uh, well, I grew up with Messick and Butler doing Yogi, Huck, Quick Draw, all those characters, and Boo Boo, and so that was sort of a dream come true. John Luden and I were given the assignment at Hanna Barbera to do something called the Yogi's Treasure Hunt, and we piled it with all those characters and Top Cat with Arnold Stang, and Dastardly with Paul Winchell, and
Oh,
so. And our office was right at the in reception. It was right next to reception. So all the actors, whenever they were coming in Hanna-Barbera, they would go right by our office, and so we would flag them down sometimes and say, "Hey, good to see you. We just wrote the script that you're going to do it." And so Dawes and Don and Paul Winchell, on occasion after the sessions, they would come in and they would critique our work and they would give us suggestions, tweak the characters, because Messick and Dawes knew the characters backwards and forwards. So a lot of fun.
so they even knew the characters better than you guys.
Oh, definitely. Well, they've been living with those characters for 20 years while we we watched them
Children.
when we were children, but yeah.
And so, what were you like as a kid? Were you a huge animation nerd like most of us here?
Yeah, I would lay down on the carpet with a pad in front of me, and crayon pencils, and watch, the TV right there. And so I would draw the characters as they were on there. And so
Wow.
that's really where I got really interested. So I would draw Huck and Yogi and all those characters, some Disney characters when they were on. And my parents saw that I was busy with this, but they thought I was tracing it, and I wasn't. I said, "You didn't trace it?" No, I just saw it from on TV. So they kept giving me more pads and more crayons.
And you grew up in Jersey, right?
I did. Metuchen, New Jersey.
East Coast represent.
Yeah, and it was a great childhood. I had two older brothers. We had great neighbors. Our neighborhood was, all of our generation. So we would play softball and basketball and football. No matter what the season was, we had something to do. And yeah, it was a wonderful small town experience. My parents lived in Metuchen from the day they were born to the day they died. So they were
Oh,
both
wow.
there for dad for 80 years, my mom for 93.
Were they high school sweethearts or something?
They knew each other in kindergarten, and they were high school sweethearts. They were, yeah. And there was a guy came up to me and said, I hate your dad. And I said, why do you hate him? Well, he was one of the guys that grew up. Well, he dated your mother, and I really liked her. And yeah.
Wow. So it sounds like you grew up in a family with a lot of love and support.
Yeah, my dad had a great sense of humor, and my mom was very encouraging for all, to pursue my artistic bent. I I think my dad thought I should go into, law or something to that effect. This cartoon business can't possibly work. And after college, I made a little film in college. And after college, I went back to New Jersey and I worked for my brother in construction. And I kept falling off roofs because I'd be carrying shingles up the ladder and walking. And I'd be thinking about cartoon stuff in my head. And I'd walk off the roof. And the gravity didn't work like it does in cartoons. So I got really messed up one time. I fell on a whole bunch of pots, and it was and I realized the next day I realized I got to get a car and drive to Los Angeles and try to get a gig out there.
So did any of those gags work their way into your cartoons, like guy roofing on ladder?
Well, but as all the Bugs Bunny cartoons, Elmer runs off the cliff and hangs there a beat and falls. No, I did not hang a beat at all. So, yeah, I will tell you this, that everything I kind of learned and grew up with and absorbed from my childhood through the high school years, through the college years, there are elements of all of those moments that are in a lot of the cartoons that I've been involved with. I mean, I had a song that I wrote for Russian literature. I was taking a Russian literature class in senior year in high school. And I used the poem that I wrote in high school. I wrote that. It was called Russian Names Are Kind of a Game. There's a first and a last and a middle name. Giving the first name is the mama's chore, like Boris, Alexander, or Fyodor. Last name comes from the family, like Pushkin, Bazarov, Porphyry. With the middle name, here comes the fun. The papa gives his last name to the son, his first name to the son. He then adds an ovis or a yivich to the end. Here's an example so you'll comprehend. Papa's name is son of, now here's the switch. The kid's middle name is the son of Ovich. So I wrote that in high school, and as you can see, some things you never forget. So then I was doing, years later, I was doing Road Rovers, and I had Kevin Michael Richardson playing this Russian wolfhound, a Russian husky, and someone, an interrogator asks him his name, and he goes through that whole thing. He does the poem, and it aired once, and parents complained about the son of a bitch at the end, and that it was edited out.
Did you give your high school self residuals on that? You were like,
I hope I did.
That's amazing. I mean, to think about that you were like working at that level in high school. I mean, your teachers must have just been blown away.
Oh, I think they were just annoyed by me a lot. We did in high school, we a couple pals of mine, Alan Vanook and Kenny Hollenbeck, and we would make, rather than write essays, we would create radio plays where we would do voices as, and one time senior year, we actually made a film in sync with sound and dialogue and everything. We got the Jewish Community Center in town let us use their stage on Friday afternoon. We recreated the Tonight Show with the guests from America. They were great characters from American literature. And so we made that film. I have that somewhere. I've never been able to sync it up as well. But I did in college, we studied so many different things, but Paradise Lost by Milton. And on that one, rather than know the book well, which was impossible, it was tough, I wrote, for my essay, for my final paper on that, I wrote, I turned it into a Hollywood musical.
No way.
Yeah, and I used California, Here I Come as Purgatory, Here We Come, Land of Hate and Devil's Glum, where fire into the night, where boulders will smolder sizzling bright. God in his cruel politics sends us to the river Styx. Flames will be our crucifix, so Purgatory, Here We Come.
Oh my God.
But again, things stuck in your head that I use then for Animaniacs, where they go to see Satan, Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, and they sing him that song. So nothing is wasted. Nothing. Nothing.
Wow, word to the wise. Start creating early and keep at it. And then
I
you can.
actually tell my kids, and I tell anyone, if you have ideas, write them down now. And maybe you don't do them. Maybe you don't expand on them. But do write them down and have a book with all your thoughts like that in them. Because I'm constantly going back to things that I haven't completed that I think, this is really pretty good. I should try to wrap this up. Yeah.
And so when you went to college, did you try to get a degree in animation, or was that even a thing? Or
Right. I went to a place called Dartmouth College, and it was a BA, a bachelor's degree, and it was you learn a lot about a lot of different things. But I was an English major because they didn't have a film degree. They had a film studies program, so I used that.
and you made a movie when you were there, Platypus Duck, I believe.
Right. You can see.
Thank you for
You can probably see that online. I think it might be on my I have like
your blog.
A YouTube. I have a YouTube thing called Cartoonatics, and I think you can find it there. And it's 11 minutes, and it's not the greatest print, and it's just there was a grant being offered, like $3,000 to help finance a movie. I probably needed about 50, and but I did it for 3, and it took me 2 years, and it ruined my life for 2 years. So I don't really recommend everyone to say, I'm going to make an 11-minute cartoon. It's going to be really well animated. It's honestly just a tremendous amount of work, and so be careful. Make short things to show off your skills, and then get a job and have someone pay you more to make an opus.
Well, I mean, it's the technology has shifted, so it's so much easier now. Wouldn't it be just for someone to make an 11-minute in Flash, or
yes,
even a stop motion or something?
I think you could. This was like a lot of cell animation and painting and inking, and oh my god!
How did you learn how to do that?
Well, if you see it, you'll see I didn't learn how to do it. This is not right, because there are things that you can say, well, why isn't that quite working? Because I learned when I went to Hanna Barbera a few years later is that you do, well, I should have known this. You do the extremes. You do like the gestures. If the guy's pitching the ball, you do the way back, hold back, and then the next drawing is probably that the animator is doing is the release of the ball, and then the assistant animator is doing all these in-betweens.
Yeah.
So I was doing, unfortunately, this drawing, and then this drawing, then this drawing, then this drawing, and that slows up your animation. That's going to make it kind of languid. You'll lose the snap when you're doing it in order like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, the timing doesn't work out. So, I mean, again, when I went to Hanna Barbera after college, I mean, that's really where I learned. And they were, how about that? I don't know if that's true nowadays for animation studios to hire people that really don't know hardly anything. And that was me. Of course, out here now, we have a lot of people that have gone to CalArts, and they do know a lot. So that's very exciting.
And so you were back in Jersey, falling off roofs.
Yes.
And how did you transition? How did you get out here? Did you come out with a job, or
no.
Did you figure it out when you got here?
I wanted to get a job. I heard that Bakshi was making Lord of the Rings, and if those of you who remember back then, he made a version of Lord of the Rings that was almost all rotoscoped, and it was pretty. It wasn't great, but I thought there were still openings. So I got a car. I drove out here in 3 days, and I called up Bakshi, and they said, drop off your portfolio, and I got there, and they said, well, Ralph's gone for 2 weeks, so he can't get to it till then. So I'm like, oh my god! And I really didn't have 2 weeks of money on me. So I started calling. I called up Chuck Jones. I called up every studio I could find, the different studios. So I called up Hanna Barbera, and they said, "Who would you like to speak with?" And I said, and I didn't know anyone. I said, "Bill Hanna." And And so they connect me to Bill Hanna's office. And they said, well, he's not in at the moment. Can I take a message? And I said, well, I'm Tom Ruegger. I'm from New Jersey. I'm an animator. I lied. And I'm looking for work. And he said, well, let me get your number. If he wants to talk to you, he'll call you back. And I was in a phone booth outside of my motel on Sunset Boulevard.
Oh my God.
And I didn't have a phone in the room. And the room's a shabby thing. And it's a phone booth that is completely dominated by, how do we say that? Women of the night. Women of the night, I'll say that.
Okay.
And they're like banging on the, hey, hurry it up, I'm expecting a call, you know. So I give Hanna's secretary the phone number of the booth. And I said, oh, okay. But then I leave the booth and I said, listen, there's a call. It could come in, so I'll be over in like room 17. And they're like, yeah. So an hour later, on room 17, and it's one of these generous women, and she said, are you Ruegger? And I said, yeah, I am. Oh, there's a phone call for you. Hurry up, you know, I'm expecting a call. So I rush out to the booth, and yes, this is Tom, and hold for Bill Hanna. And he gets on the line. I said, yeah, this Ruegger? I said, yes, sir, and get right over here. We're really busy. And he hangs up. He didn't even give me the address. He said, get right over here. We're really busy. That was it.
Well, he thought, wow, he's got such a nice secretary.
I know, what a great secretary.
Let's get someone answering his phones. This guy must be, you know, big deal.
Oh, no, yeah, that's right. I have a great.
You have such a good secretary.
And yeah, she got me right away. So I got lost, but I drove over to Hanna Barbera. But I left my portfolio at Back Shoes. So all I had was a set of slides. So Bill had holding these slides up against the window, got up in the sun. What the hell is that? And that's a drawing of a dog. It's not a dog where I come from, you know. Anyway, he gave me a 1 month trial period, and that's how I got my start in the business. I survived it. I survived the 1 month.
So like entry level but paid job?
Yeah, I was in betweening on the first day. I was in betweening on a show called Godzilla, the Godzilla Power Hour, and we were drawing Godzilla with like pencils that were this thick. Their lead was like this thick because the Godzilla outline needed to be really thick, and they didn't Xerox well because the Xerox breaks down when the black line is so thick. So they had to ink it. It was a mess.
Oh my God. Or we could go to the inserts on the show and be like this and like show an example. It'd be awesome.
Well, there's someone that looks like you in that show called Jana of the Jungle. Actually very much like you.
Okay.
And that was the fun part of the show. You said, can I have a Jana of the Jungle sequence? Because there's this beautiful woman, you know, running through the jungle, and said you got Godzilla. So anyone that had a life drawing class, and I had a couple, they said, have you had a life drawing? Yeah. All right, you can do some Jana.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. Was Ginny McSwain the receptionist then, or?
Well, no, was she already in voiceover?
She was already directing at that point?
I don't think she was directing. I think she might have been Gordon Hunt's assistant at that point.
That's so funny. Wow. And so from there, you know, obviously you were working on a lot of shows that were pre-existing. How did you come into shows that were already ongoing, shows like Scooby-Doo, and then how did you learn to adapt to their pre-existing production?
Yeah,
was that difficult?
Yeah, I liked my sample piece to get into filmation for writing was a dog cartoon I wrote about a suicidal dog whose girlfriend broke up with him, and his friend, another dog, tries to save him from each of his suicide attempts and gets creamed in the bargain. So it's sort of like almost a reverse Wile E. Coyote, where rather than catching, he's trying to save. And so that was my intro for writing at Filmation. And they said, well, you know, we can't really do this cartoon, Tom, because it's about suicide. And and we don't think the kids will really get into that. And but
that thought had not even crossed your mind.
Well, it was funny though, because he was, just getting creamed in it, and then the next scene he was fine. I guess. Was it funny? I think because the little guy, it was called Pitts and his pal, and Pitts was always in the pits. But I love the dog stuff. So when I went to Hanna Barbera, when they had a Huckleberry Hound assignment, or they had like Pound Puppies or Scooby, they tend to throw the dogs at me, but my first week at Hanna-Barbera, the second time when I'm now in the writing department working under Joe Barbera and Margaret Lesh, I was rooming with a guy named Hank Soroyan, a great guy. He ultimately was the producer on the original Muppet Babies, very talented. And he was the Scooby-Doo story editor. And the place was so busy. I was rooming with him, and he said, "How would you like to be the Scooby-Doo story editor?" And I said, "What do you mean? You're the story editor." He said, "Yeah, but I can't do it. I'm going out of my mind. I got to do something else." And I said, "Well, I've never seen Scooby-Doo." And this was 1982, and I still hadn't. He had been on for 13 years, but I just was out of my. This wasn't what I was doing.
Window.
I was serious with the Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes, and so I took home every Scooby-Doo. They were 3/4-inch, big clunky things, big 3/4-inch machine, and took it home that weekend. Watched every Scooby-Doo I could find, took notes, and on Monday, I became the Scooby-Doo story editor without ever having. Isn't that well? That's proof. I think. I mean, talk about timing and luck and good fortune and just like right place, right time. Here I'm rooming with the guy that is the story editor, and unlike today, where the story editor of Scooby-Doo is probably very happy being the story editor, he's like, "No, I got to do something else."
Wow, amazing.
So I was
Jinkies.
Jinkies is right.
Jinkies, that's a crazy story. But you know what I mean? It's always that thing of you had to be talented to get the luck came about, but you had to be talented to keep the job. So
well, yes, but the luck is so important, and it's just also reading the room. So when I went to Hanna-Barbera for an interview for this position, because they needed writers, I was escorted into. I had met Bill Hanna the first time. Now this is for writing, so I'm escorted into Joe Barbera, and he's sitting there, and he's like, truly like Don Corleone. He's in a dark room. He's wearing a beautiful suit. Yeah, you almost need to kiss his ring. It's like, so you sit down. Hi, Mr. Barbera. It's call me Joe, and okay, Joe, and so I hear that you want to maybe do some writing here. Is that right? He says, well, let me tell you about this cartoon I'm working on. And Joe Barbera proceeds to tell me for a half an hour a detailed, like shot by shot, frame by frame story about Yogi Bear in Jellystone Park. And it sounds familiar. The story sounds familiar. But I'm listening to it. And then this school bus of kids comes by. All the little kids look out the window and they go, look at the bears, look at the bears, look at the bears. And Yogi's like, hey, boo-boo, I can't stand this any longer. I got to get out of here. Oh, I can't stand these kids looking at me. Look at the bears. Look at the bears. So he tells me, and it's a half an hour. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And at the end of it, he says, so what do you think? What do you think about this? I said, that's good. It's funny. I said, okay, you're hired. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's luck. That's reading the room. It's like if I had said that was stupid, or if I had said I've heard it before, maybe something else. But I went along with it. I kind of chuckled, but I stayed there for like a decade. And
you worked on Snorks too, right?
Snorks, yeah, All-Star. He had the star on his chest.
All-Star. Aw, yeah.
And that was very Smurfy.
Very Smurfy. But yeah, followed Smurfs, I think, on Saturday mornings. I remember that from when I was
Underwater Smurfs. Yeah.
yeah. And so, and your first, if I'm correct, your first producing credit was a pup named Scooby Doo. Is that right?
Yeah, I did associate producer on 13 Ghosts, where Mitch Gower was the producer, and I kind of helped. But yeah, the first show that I really sort of developed as an original was A Pup Named Scooby Doo, and yeah, I
Yeah.
produced.
My son and I were just watching the first episode today.
A Bicycle Built for Boo. That's the
Yeah,
title of it.
it was so fun. Yeah, I was there. There was yeah. So when you came into that show, the Scooby Doo had already been airing for 20 years. So
Uh,
did they approach you with this idea, or did you approach them with this idea of kind of younging them down and doing, I guess, the prequel? Would you call it a prequel? Or
yeah, we had been making. I had been working for ABC for a number of years, and I think I just worked on Pound Puppies for them.
another great show.
They liked me, and I liked them, and Scooby had been off for a year, which was like Hanna Barbera was not pleased about Scooby not being on, and they were encouraging me to get something else going on Scooby, and ABC was interested. So I worked with Scott Geralds and Alfred Gemeno to come up with some younger designs, and we sold it on really the designs and the idea that these kids came together, and they're always concerned about kid relatability on back then on the networks. That was one of the reasons they had a character named Slim Slam added to the team on 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. They wanted a kid. So rather than go through that ordeal again, I said, let's just make them kids, and then they won't have any problems. So I thought that show was a lot of fun. It had a lot of Tex Avery type wild takes with her eyes popping out, which I loved that. And we had a great crew working on it.
And did you feel at any point that there was like a turning point in your career? And if so, what was it?
It was right around then.
Yeah.
So it was with A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, where I was given sort of the keys to the car and allowed to drive Scooby off a cliff, and and it was successful. I mean, the show had good ratings, people liked it, and it was the first Scooby show, the first iteration of Scooby that was nominated for an Emmy.
Boom!
Boom! So I was feeling, I'm something else, huh? So now my boss, Hanna Barbera, Jean McCurdy, had left at that point. And she was working at Warner Brothers. And one day she called up and said, "Can you send me a copy of your favorite Scooby, the one you think is best?" So I did. I didn't know what she wanted it for. And I was busy with stuff. I said, "Yeah, sure, here." And so she comes back to me a few days later. I meet her at some restaurant in Burbank, like at 6 p.m. She said, "Well, I showed it to Steven Spielberg, right?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? What?" Yes, I showed it to Steven Spielberg, and we at Warner Brothers, Bob Daly, Terry Semel, and I met with Steven, and he wants to do something called Tiny Toons. And I suggested you as the producer, and I showed him the tape, and he said, "Yeah, that sounds good. Let's try him." So that's what, and then so they said, "So will you quit Hanna-Barbera to come do this with Steven?" And I said, "Well, if they'll let me out, yeah," and they did.
What was going through your mind at that time? Do you remember how like you were feeling about that?
I was very excited. I was totally jazzed. Then a week later, I'm going to have my first meeting with Steven, and I've spent the whole week basically creating Tiny Toons, because he said it's Tiny Toons, but that was it. We knew it couldn't be the children of the Looney Tunes, because there are too many licensees of Looney Tunes, and this is true. Warner Brothers didn't want to share the licensees of Looney Tunes with Steven, because Tiny Toons was a split down the middle deal. Half goes to Steven, half goes to Warner Brothers. So it needed to be characters that were not related to the Looney Tunes.
I
But
totally always thought they were.
yeah, but they're basically miniature versions of them. But if you'll notice, they never say, "Oh, you're my dad" or "You're my uncle," or it's just they're the teachers at Acme University. So
Ah,
so I spent the week coming up with Acme University and all the different aspects and the characters and their names, which the names were a nightmare because legal, I got involved in all the names. And so I was ready to go pitch this thing to Mr. Spielberg. And I remember it was like 10 a.m. and I had to leave. And the meeting was at 11 a.m. across town. And I was at home and my wife and I literally, I think what you'd call this is like, I had like a nervous breakdown. I'm like, wait a minute. I had this job at Hanna Barbera. It was really good. I was popular. They liked me. And I just quit it to go work with Spielberg. But what if he hates my guts? And oh, what have I done? You know, and I realized, oh, what have I done? And but my wife, thankfully, she said, just chill and just tell him about your favorite cartoons. And I don't know why that worked, but it really did. And I did. I went to the meeting and I told him about my favorite cartoons, which were the Looney Tunes of the past. I loved all, Bugs, Daffy, Porky. I loved those cartoons growing up. I love them now. I was trying to emulate them wherever I could. So I did. I went into the meeting. I said, all right, you Tiny Toon Adventures. You Tiny Toons, they didn't call it Adventures. And I said, we're going to try and do our very best to make more 7-minute shorts in the tradition of the zaniness and the irreverence of the Looney Tunes. And I talked about the characters that I liked and why they were great. And he was just like, he was like a kid. Yeah, those are my favorite cartoons too. And yeah, remember when, the big music, we got to use the big music. So it was we mind melded right there, and it was a great meeting.
wow. And it was originally Tiny Toons, like Tunes.
Well, the first picture that was Mitch Schauer, the guy that had produced 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, drew for, before I ever showed up, a picture of who would become Buster Bunny, and it was Tiny, Tunes, and which goes with Looney Tunes. That's how they spell it, Tunes too. But by then, Steven had created Toontown, so Toon took over. So it was called Tiny Toons, which we loved. And but then Steven got it in his head that he wanted the show to be adventures. He thought, I think it'd be better if we call it Tiny Toon Adventures, because then the kids will think it's adventures, just not a bunch of nonsense. And okay, it happened that way.
Amazing. And so Tiny Toons goes on to become a huge success.
It worked
And
out.
I'm sorry?
It worked out.
Yes, you could say it worked out. And then how did you conceive the idea for Animaniacs? How did that show come about?
Well, we had the success with Tiny Toons. McCurdy and Spielberg came to me after it was clear Tiny Toons was a hit. And they said, okay, what's next? And
Just like just like in Animaniacs, right?
I had not been thinking about what's next much. I really hadn't. I just knew that for all of us, for all the people that were on it, Rich Ahrens and Sherry Stoner and a lot of the other people, we were about cooked on Tiny Toons. We had made a lot of them, and we had made the second season, so we were close to 100 of those, and we wanted to do something new. And Steven said, well, why don't we just do a spin-off of Tiny Toons? We'll do like the Plucky Duck show. And I said, oh, no, please, not that. I don't want to do it. I have some new ideas.
Because of the 2 hours of torture in college, you were like, never again.
No more ducks, please, no more ducks. And that's right. And yeah, it really does take a long time on all this stuff. So I had some new ideas and a bunch of different, and we had a great crew of creative people to come up with great stuff. So let us come up with a brand new show. which we'll call Animaniacs. And he said, well, it has to have a marquee name. And I said, well, you're the marquee name. Steven Spielberg Presents, that's on the marquee. He said, no, the show itself has to have a marquee name, or, I want to go with Plucky Duck. I'm like, oh, no. So we have these great ideas, but we don't have a marquee name. So I'm walking across the lot a few days later, and there's this water tower on the lot with the WB logo on it. And I had what I like to call a cartoon epiphany.
Ah, what does that look like?
So the marquee, I see the water tower is a marquee. It has the WB on it. And suddenly these things fell into place where the lead characters, the zany characters that we wanted to star in the show, I can have them living in the water tower, and they can be called the Warner Brothers, and ultimately the Warner Sisters. And then so we went to the Warner Brothers estate, and we got them to okay us using the rights to the Warner Brother family name. And then we went to Steve, and we said, and I said, okay, here's your marquee, and it's the water tower. And I had artwork, and we opened up the water tower, and they're living inside. And he laughed, and he appreciated the fact that I'd gone to so much trouble to give him his marquee name, and so he completely bought it
and reinvented it. Yeah, like.
And then, it definitely was satisfying. But we did pitch a whole batch of things to Steven. We went to his house on a Saturday morning. Sherry and Deanna and Rich Aarons and Alfred Gimeno and I. And we had all the characters. We had like stand-ups, they were just like pretty good sized stand-ups. And so we had a bunch of franchises, including Slappy and Skippy and Pinky and the Brain of the Warners, Mindy and Buttons, and some others that were cut. They didn't make the cut. But the Pinky and the Brain pitch, I literally, this is all I said. These are lad minds. This guy's really smart. This guy's an idiot. And they're planning every night to take over the world. That's their bit. That's what they're doing every night. And their theme song is this. And so then I sang the theme song, but we didn't have the music yet, so I sang it, and it's the same lyrics as the ultimate theme song, but I sang it to the tune of Singing in the Rain, which it's what there's Pinky in the Brain. One is a genius, the other's insane. They're laboratory mice. Their genes have been spiced. They're Pinky in the Brain. There you go. So, and he was just like this. And he said, sold. That was his reaction, sold. Which you loved it.
What a legendary story. You've lived such a brilliant life. I feel like we could talk for hours. Actually, this is kind of a throwback, but the very first episode of this show I ever did, this started as a web series in 2009. My very first interview was Earl Kress. Oh, I love Earl Kress. Now, Earl Kress, Yogi's Treasure Hunt. I worked with Earl Kress. He did a lot of Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, Tiny Toons. Great guy. Beautiful Earl Kress. Yeah. So it didn't continue. It started and stopped. So this is the reboot version, much like many of the reboots you've experienced. You've been doing
that for 12 years then, huh? I mean, on and off.
Yes, mostly off.
Okay, all right.
But we're on, so Good. Hey, if I had never stopped, I'd probably be like a real famous YouTuber by now, guys.
Yeah, well, let's keep it going. Just tell us, if you have a moment, about your trip to Dublin.
Oh my God, it was amazing. So there's an event out there called the VO Euro Retreat, and it's for a select group of voice actors that are really looking to take their career to the next level. And Daniel Ross was going to be, he's a comrade of mine. He was going to speak on character animation of video games and had to unfortunately cancel at the last minute. So I had recently done a podcast with the host, and they reached out to me about coming in last minute to fill Daniel's very big Donald shaped shoes. So I said yes, and had to put some things on hold, but it was yes to a great adventure. And we were basically staying in this like castle. I
Oh,
mean, they said
wow.
it's not a castle because a castle has turrets. This
Oh,
does
yeah.
not have turrets, but it was like being in the Beast's like mansion. Like they had all these like urns from like Ming Dynasty urns, and like the paintings are like, is that a real like
Is this
legend?
where they put you up?
Yeah, that's where the whole thing was.
Oh,
At this place called the K Club in Kildare, which is where they had the Ryder Cup in
oh,
92 or some 82
yes,
or something.
yes.
So it. Whoop, got a little cricket there. So it was an amazing experience. Yeah.
And how now? Did you have to give a presentation or a speech or answer questions or what?
Yeah, I did three presentations, doing a general talk about character acting, techniques for finding characters, different acting techniques, a general overview about the difference between animation VO versus video game VO, and uh,
Nice.
2.5 hours. So, and everybody there was fully vaxxed, which
That's
uh,
great.
was
And that's,
appreciated.
well,
So,
that's great.
oh
That's,
yeah, this is probably a good opportunity to talk about your collaboration with Mark Hamill. You did the
oh,
can you tell us about the Will You Wear a Mask
sure.
project?
Will you wear a mask? I wrote it. I finished it like August last year, and this was when people were, this was fairly early in the will I wear a mask or not, and so I put it online as a little book, like a Kindle book or something, and uh, my friend over at Disney, Emily Hart, called me and said, "You need to get someone to record this and put it online so people can enjoy it as an easy watching, listening experience." And I said, "You're right, Emily." And so I thought, Mark Hamill. For some reason, I thought Mark Hamill could handle the three or four voices that are involved, and he has authority, but he also has a sense of fun. So I sent it to Mark because he had done some Batman stuff for us years ago, and he said, "Oh, Tom, you got to go through my agent. Come on, don't." And I said, "You're right, Mark. I'm sorry. I'll go to the agent." And then 5 minutes later, he calls me back and says, "No, I just read it. We're going to do it." And so he calls his agent and says, "Let's make this happen." And so everybody involved in this, including Mark Kondracki, who has a voiceover studio in Burbank, and Mark and Kelly Ward, who directed, everybody did it for gratis. So,
Oh, I love Kelly Ward.
oh, Kelly, yeah, he's great. Yeah, he thinks you're great too. And
Oh,
um, so it anyway, it didn't cost a lot to make it. We put it out there, and everyone that we encouraged everyone to donate to World Central Kitchen. And so anyone who bought the book, with all that money went to World Central Kitchen. Anyone who supported it, anyway. So it was for
Tamar's
charity.
asking if there's time for a sequel about vaccinations.
I know. What was it? I had the title too. Something about you really need to get a shot a lot, or something. I forget. Yeah.
Well, I know, gosh, this time is just flying by, and I have so many questions that I'm so curious to pick your brain on, but I need to be selective. So let me just think. I am very curious about how becoming a father influenced your creativity and your work in animation, because I know for me it was a big shift, but I've also talked to people that say it was just part of my life. And was that a big shift for you, or
I think it. I think it was really kind of crucial for me because I'm making programs for children, and what better what I mean, the knowledge I learned of just being with these kids, my three sons. I'm from three sons, so having three sons, it felt like deja vu all over. And, yeah, that's three sons. You have to get Kevin Michael Richardson on here and have him do his My Three Sons impressions. Really, you do.
I'm going to reach out to him this week, actually.
Great, because he's maybe my favorite of all the guys I've worked with. I mean, I love Tress MacNeille a lot, but Kevin is such a wonderful man, and he'd be great to be on your show. Yeah. So the kids became my audience. I mean, my three sons, once they hit an age where they could be articulate and react to the cartoons, I would know if it's working or not. I know that I did a Yogi's Treasure Hunt where I named the kids in the episode Nathan and Luke, my first two sons, and I had them battling. Our guys were battling something called the Greed Monster, and the character of Nate became the Greed Monster, and my son, I can tell you, hated that episode. He hated it.
Dad!
Yeah, why would you do that to me? And there was another time where Nathan was coming at I had Nate doing voiceover for Skippy Squirrel, and Skippy, who was Slappy Squirrel's nephew, and he was playing. It was called Soccer Coach Slappy, and Skippy kept getting hit in the head with the soccer ball, and then wailing, just wah! But it made him, his head was like a magnet for the soccer ball, so they put him in the goalie, so every time they kicked the ball, it would hit his head, and they wouldn't score, and he was the winner as the best goalie, but he would cry every time he got hit in the head. And and so I started getting notes from my kids. I don't think so. Skippy would do that. So my 8-year-old son is giving the writer-producer notes on the character. And,
did you take the notes?
I said, I don't know how to get around this, Skippy. He didn't want to keep crying all the time. He wanted Skippy to have other reactions, which I think is pretty smart, because at some point you stop crying and you take care of business, maybe.
Yeah. Is it the rule of three? Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. And so they did become a bigger part, and your sons have gone on to work in.
I've dragged in all three of them. Luke played Big Fat Baby on Hysteria, and he played on Animaniacs. He did the voice of something called The Flame, and The Flame told stories about the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere and things like that. And the youngest, Cody, became the voice of Bluebird. He sang the 12 Days of Christmas. He actually came home one day, Cody did, from school, and he said, I got a new song for you. I said, okay. And he started singing the 12 Days of Christmas. On the 12th day of Christmas, what you look to me, 12 turtle doves, 11 turtle doves, 10 turtle doves, 9 turtle doves. So 5 turtle doves, 4 turtle doves, 3, and 1 by chantic king said turtle dove. So the next day I brought him to the studio and recorded it, and we put that on Animaniacs. And then just to completely wrap it all up, last year, Rob Paulson and Randy Rogel were doing a show in New York, and Cody, the Bluebird back then, he lives in New York. He's a lawyer there, and so he joined them on stage, and he did. 20 years later, he sang that song to the audience.
What a magical life! What a magical world! Aww. So I know a lot of people, me for sure, are inspired by what you've created. And I just started reading this new book, which is called Shipping Creative Work by Seth Godin. And I mean, a lot of people talk about this, about how if you wait for inspiration to strike, then you're too consistent to make progress in your field of creativity. So I was kind of curious to hear about your process. And obviously you've had these moments of divine inspiration, as some of us that have that ability to tap into, but what is your process for shipping the work, especially in the beginning? Like, how did you begin that?
I think my brother Pete told me something. I was in college, and I wanted, I'm kind of a perfectionist, or I guess, I don't know. But I was having trouble shipping the work in college. I was having trouble finishing the job I started. I'm great at starting. It's
Yeah,
wrapping.
yeah.
Yeah. And he said, hey, sometimes you don't need an A. You don't need to get an A. Sometimes, B's good. Sometimes you just got to grab a C and just get it done. That was helpful because, you want everything to be perfect and wonderful, but sometimes you just have to deliver. Um, uh, Disney, I think when I was working on the 7D, we had some very difficult, challenging deadlines. And, sometimes we had to get it done. On Animaniacs, we had just luxurious deadlines. And, we could get this thing done. Maybe we're not done with that. We don't have to do it because we can move this one in. So, but my creative process is, I think it's important to exercise, to run and to hike, or to get out there. Physically get your body moving. I think it's important to be in nature, to be out there. And honestly, I think most of my revelations or epiphanies have happened when I'm out there on the trail, because you're not necessarily thinking directly about the creative process, but it's moving around in there. It's having some time to gestate. I think it's important when you're done with something, you need to be able to put it down. You need to have a good night's sleep before you return to it. And I think it's always important when you have a draft that you think is done to wait a couple days and read it then and probably make some fixes. That's not a luxury that people often have in our business, but it would be great if we did. Creatively, I love cartoon characters, so I'm doodling all the time. So my creative process is often starts with drawing a funny-looking character. I have a character right now who's a deer. His name is Deadbeat Deer, and I haven't done much with him yet. But his goal is to have you. If you have a car above $60,000 in value, he's hanging out along Las Virgenes Road out near Malibu, and he's waiting for your car to come, and he's going to back out into traffic as you come, and you're going to hit him in the butt, and he is then going to guilt you into taking him home and taking care of him because he's sick of living out in the wild, and he's going to mooch on you until you get rid of him. So that's, and that's because I hit a deer on Las Virgenes many years ago, and it still bugs me. And I just remember the deer's butt, and the deer was not damaged, but my car was ruined. The deer's butt is like smashing into the windshield. It doesn't break it, but it's just like, and he rolls off the car and he kind of prances away, and my car is wrecked. So there's part of the process. It's like taking life experiences and turning them into cartoons.
Yeah, there's something else, about stepping away from the work and being in flow in a different thing that gives you access to, like, unlocks the secrets within.
Yep.
It's wise. Well, how do you balance your work life? I'm sure it's different than it was 20 years ago, but throughout
the wife who gave me the advice to just tell me about your favorite cartoons. So my balanced life is divorce, work and life. I don't think I balanced it well. I think I worked probably way too hard, or too intensely.
Yeah.
And I think only after I left Warner Brothers, then I had some time to chill, and I think life became a lot more tranquil then. But I was always a pretty intense dude there in my Warner days.
Yeah, like, how many hours a week would you work?
Oh, I would, I'd get there at 9, and I was still doing stuff at midnight, at home. Not there. I would come home, but we had storyboards. Pardon me?
Were you exercising then?
I was probably 30 pounds more than I am now, probably.
Wow.
30, about 30. So, no, the answer to that was I was not exercising very much.
And your wife now is a marathon runner, is that right?
She has run 15 marathons, but she's now done. She's not going to run marathons anymore, but she hikes a lot.
Yeah, they're hard. I ran one and I was like, that was good. That was plenty. It was fun too many.
I did one. I did Disney World. Where did you do yours?
San Francisco.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
I went to Disney World. There was a guy next to me dressed in a Goofy. This showed you how ill-equipped I was to run a marathon. Goofy in the full costume beat me.
Oh my God.
That's a lot of weight. Yeah.
That's a lot of weight. Well, I don't want to keep you because I know we're already at the time. Do you have a minute to take maybe one or two questions from the audience, or are you able to say anything about any of the current projects that you're working on, or are you under NDA?
Besides Deadbeat Deer?
Deadbeat Deer.
Don't steal Deadbeat Deer.
Hey, can I get your car? Come on, let me in. Get over here.
Very good. Hey, well, my son's working on a new project that we'll have to be in touch on that, and because he needs some voiceover help on that. And that's Luke, and I work with Luke on a daily basis on different cartoon things. I've got something I'm working on with Paul Dini, who's, of course, he created.
He went to Emerson.
Oh yes, he did.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's cool.
And Harley Quinn is one of his creations. Anyway, so Paul and I have something cooking. I've got something with a famous movie star. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff, but until you sell it, you don't want to, even talk about it. Oh yeah, call you?
This was the pot stirring. I was like cooking.
I am trying to stir the pot. Yes.
Sorry, my space work with the spoon was not very. It was
because the screen cut some of that off.
Do you have any advice for aspiring animators or people that are looking to break into the animation industry in any way?
Yes, I would make samples of your work and post them. Honestly, there's Joanne Davidovich. Do you know her, Joanne Davidovich? Very talented artist, and Dave Alvarez, another very talented artist, and they post stuff on their Facebook. And I saw those things, and I went to Disney. I said, we need them to design the characters for this show we're working on. And so Disney hired them. And while the show didn't get picked up, Disney became aware of these artists. These artists made a little money from Disney. So it's important to get samples of your work out there and in front of people, because it can lead to good things. I know, let's see, Natalie Palumbo is another example of someone who online presents some material, and I get impressed by these things, and then I want to help them get work. So that's what these older generation people like me need to do to help the younger generation along, and I hope we all do that.
And I think as creatives, a lot of us think what is our natural superpower, whether that's drawing or voice acting. You kind of don't realize that is not everybody's superpower, that everybody's so different. So you might think, oh, people don't want to see my silly little voices, or they don't want to see my art, or I'm going to wait till it's better or perfect because I'm judging it by some impossible standard. And I think, at least for me, and I've been seeing this with so others, is just don't wait for it to be perfect. Just put it out there and let somebody else judge what they think. And the more than that, it's like, yeah.
That's how you learn. And maybe you think, oh, this is perfect. And then they say, you know what? Here's a reason. I remember I was pitching an idea about a character who tickles. I thought it was a delightful character, and he goes around tickling people, and it turns out that can be a trigger for some people. I mean, even though I used to tickle my kids, there are some people out there that tickling led to bad things.
Oh.
So there are many things that you need to learn. Like, so you put something out there, okay, it's a tickling character, and you think, oh, this is going to be beloved, and then you find out, oh, that can be a problem. You need to get your stuff out there, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but you need to get some reaction. Then you can grow.
Then you can grow. Yeah, exactly. It's like putting it out there, and then right, you need the hunk of stone to carve before you can make any art.
Exactly.
We didn't really talk about Hysteria, and there was a quick question that came through. Can we talk about when you first had the idea of creating that show?
Hysteria, there was a movement for every station in the country to have something like 5 hours a week of educational children's programming. And I went to the folks at Warner Brothers and I said, let's do this. And so we made up I always loved history, and Mark Seidenberg and Bob Doucette and the whole crew, we love history. So we made up a bunch of comic characters. We had, famous people of the past like Napoleon or Abe Lincoln, like Saturday Night Live hosting the different episodes. And when we first came out, there was a report on children's programming, and the report stated that if every show made for kids was like Hysteria, like Warner Brothers Hysteria, this would be, instead of Pokemon, and instead of which I like Pokemon, but instead of Power Rangers, if every show was like Hysteria, our kids would be in better shape. They'd know more, and they would be better entertained. And so this was like the headline of this government report on educational kids programming. It was like, Hysteria is really the example. So Barbara Brogliotti, God bless her, was the head of Warner Brothers publicity, and she went to the publication and made them remove all mentions of Hysteria from the article. And I was like devastated. I said, why did you do this, Barbara? She said, it's from above. And what is coming from above? That Warner Brothers is not an educational entertainment company. We don't want to be known as one.
Wow.
Bad. Anyway, Hysteria was a wonderful experience for all involved, and I love Paul Rudd playing Nostradamus.
That's so fun. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. We've already gone over. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your wisdom. It's been so enlightening and so inspiring. So thank you so much.
Alicyn, it's been wonderful. Thank you, and let's stay in touch.
Definitely. And thank you guys for tuning in live. I'm going to go ahead and post the replay in case you missed any of it. And tune in next week. We have voice actress Olivia Hack is going to be on the show. You might know Olivia from Hey Arnold, or she was Cindy Brady as well, which I didn't know actually for a long time since I've known her. Last Airbender, she's been on Star Trek. And so we are going to sit and have a cocktail actually and just chat. So it's going to be another really fun show. So thank you so much, Tom, and many blessings to you. Thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week.